Welcome to Sliders and Wings, a podcast about the TV show Sliders.
And the TV show Wings.
And all the other forgotten TV shows of the 90s.
I'm Valerie Temple.
And I'm Rachel Cox.
All right. That was our best one yet.
Yes. We are here with Bennett Madison, friend of the pod, our only listener.
But a devoted listener.
It's quality, not quantity.
He's hopelessly devoted to this podcast.
That's right.
And we are here to talk about All-American Girl, a one-season
wonder
from 1994 to 1995, starring, of course, Margaret Cho. It aired from 94 to 95. How many episodes? Let me see.
18.
Oh, man. On ABC.
Or 19. I think it was 19.
The series is notable for being both groundbreaking and infamous. The series was the first primetime sitcom to feature an Asian American family as its focus. However, it received criticism for its stereotypical characters. ABC's attempts to reform the show resulted in the show having a lack of direction and led viewers away from the series. But isn't that implying that it was like it wasn't like a huge hit when it launched, I don't think. If it was a huge hit, they wouldn't have retooled it. After the first season, ABC wished to revamp All-American Girl into an ensemble series, but those plans were unrealized.
Right.
All right, so who has a history with this show they would like to share?
Me, I watched it. I definitely watched it. I was probably too young for Margaret Cho's comedy at that time, but there was something about her that I thought was really cool. And so I was interested in it and I definitely checked it out.
I think I probably have seen a few minutes of it at some point. I certainly remember when it launched because it got a lot of press when it launched. And like Val, I thought Margaret Cho seemed very cool, basically just from the ads for the show in People magazine or whatever, but no, I didn't watch it. I think I was sort of over the half-hour sitcom format by that point in my life.
What's funny to me is that I remember it being part of TGIF, but it's not at all.
I watched this religiously, I think, because I remember being really upset when it was canceled. Really upset. I thought it was funny. I love the grandma. I thought it was also funny. My guess is that I might have known who Margaret Cho was because I know that whenever Comedy Central became a thing, we had cable and I was watching Comedy Central every day after school because I used to watch short attention span theater and stand up, which were stand-up comedy clip shows. I'm like, she must have been on it.
Sure.
She must have been on it. So I must have known who she was. I was pretty hip and I kind of knew what was going on in comedy when I was 13.
You were down. Yeah. The Wikipedia page, which by the way is massive. Have you looked at this Wikipedia page? There's theory involved in it. Themes, femininity, romantic relationships, Asian American family, Orientalism. It's a Wikipedia page that I feel is unusual because it feels very opinion-based. There are facts here, but it's a lot of takes. It says that the show was included in a Wednesday night lineup that included other women in lead roles, Brett Butler, Grace Under Fire, Ellen DeGeneres, Ellen, and most successfully Roseanne Barr, Roseanne. So it says All-American Girl was created by ABC to capitalize on the trend of female comedians headlining their own sitcoms.
I do kind of wonder if at some point they aired this during TGIF to drum up interest for it, if they reran it on a Friday or something, because I'm pretty sure that I saw it once and I'm pretty sure that was probably while I was babysitting, which is when I tended to watch weird shit that I didn't normally watch.
Little kid shows.
Kind of, yeah.
I have a distinct memory of it being part of TGIF. Maybe that was part of the network sort of trying to figure out what to do with the show. They thought they had created a show that was for adults. It was edgier, this is a female comedian. This is for adults. And then it really wasn't for adults. It appealed to kids because the broad
she's an adult, but she lives at home. So yes. It's straddling this line.
What I thought was confusing about it was how old she was supposed to be.
She looks in her 30s, even though she was probably in her 20s when this.
Yeah, I think she was 26. I did look up all the ages of the main cast.
So the big bombshell, which is the grandma is only 15 years older than Margaret Cho.
Yes. Cho was 26. Amy Hill played the grandma. She was 41. The mom was only 40. The dad was the oldest at 46. And then BD Wong was 34.
Wow.
So basically the one playing his mom was 6 years older. I mean, you could tell that she was a young person and they just put some streaks of gray in her hair and just like cross their fingers. I mean, it's not that weird because Sophia on Golden Girls was the same age or younger than some of the other cast members, right?
She was fully younger than all of them.
Yeah. So like, it's not like
10 years younger.
It didn't have anything to do with race or anything. There are some really amazing guest stars here. Ming-Na Wen played Stewart's fiance. Daniel Day Kim was on it. That's the guy from Lost. Oprah Winfrey came on. After I watched the pilot, which was only 3 hours ago, I had a hankering for more. I went and found the next one I could watch, and I didn't get all the way through it, but Jack Black was on it.
I did the same thing, Rachel. So I watched that full episode, which has Oprah.
A Night at the Opera. Quentin Tarantino pops up, plays Margaret's boyfriend, and then Vicki Lawrence is in one of them.
Quentin Tarantino was actually dating Margaret Cho at the time.
I remember they dated, yeah.
So he came on as a guest star, and that was like right when Pulp Fiction came out. So he was sort of a big deal. But like, what a weird thing to do.
So there's a comment that the mom makes in the pilot that I think about almost weekly whenever I put away a dish that still has like a drop of water on it, because they're drying the dishes and she says, dry them thoroughly, otherwise the dishes will mildew. And when that happened in the pilot, I was like, a dish can mildew? It was so shocking to me. And so I'm always paranoid about putting away a wet dish.
It really has poisoned your
26
brain.
years later. But I remember thinking it was so funny, and I love Jodi Gold.
I forgot that she was on this show. Bennett, you didn't watch it really at all, so you definitely don't remember her.
No, although I was surprised by the fact that I recognized basically everyone in the cast, like her family. I don't know, other than BD Wong, I don't really know where I recognize them from.
Jodi Gold, she was like a 90s comedian, super tall, and I remember her from Comedy Central.
Oh yeah, but she had a curl. She would always talk about her curl. She would like plaster a curl of hair to the side of her cheek. That was her signature.
But I remember her on like Premium Blend and like all of those like stand-up specials. But I did love her being the sort of slut.
Yes. But then in the episode 17, that's not the pilot, she's like, come on, someone ran over a possum. Let's go look at it.
Someone ran over a possum? I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's what she was doing to get guys. She was just looking at roadkill with them. Okay, so in the pilot is just a first generation child of immigrant story where the mom is still very entrenched in Korean culture and she wants her daughter to marry a Korean boy or date a boy with Korean ancestry. And Margaret's like very into being American. But she doesn't say, I don't want to date a Korean guy. She just says, I don't want you to pick who I'm dating. So it was just all about the relationship between Margaret and her mom. And it's just back and forth. And I thought it was very funny. I mean, I thought it was a pretty good pilot.
It was pretty funny, although I did not think Kyle was hot at all.
No,
he was all right.
How was the American boyfriend? You don't even see him for the first half of the show. You just hear like a very loud motorcycle sound effect. It's like, there he is. And she goes out on a date with him.
Margaret Cho, I think, is a really good actress.
Yeah, she's pretty good.
I thought she was pretty charismatic in this.
Yes.
I thought she was still finding her pitch, kind of. You could tell she wasn't totally comfortable with it, but she did feel like she had real star power.
I agree with
I thought her timing was great. I don't know. I just thought all her jokes landed.
I liked her outfits too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I remember about the show is that Margaret Cho wore cool outfits and she seemed really cool. Although watching it now, I feel like in the first episode, I think I was a little annoyed by her. She seemed bratty. I was like, oh, I don't know how likable you are. Just seemed like the motivation was trying to annoy her family.
Well, part of the problem is you don't really see her with the boyfriend very much. Can't really tell what
the appeal.
Right, exactly. One thing I thought was very confusing about the episode is that the plot is that she has this boyfriend, her family doesn't like the boyfriend, and then basically to annoy them, she says that she's going to move in with the boyfriend and make steps toward doing this. Then by the end, she gets cold feet and decides not to move in with the boyfriend, which all seemed reasonable, basically. But then she sort of, as an afterthought, she breaks up with the boyfriend too, with no explanation at all. So I didn't understand how going from like moving in to not moving in then like resulted in breaking up at all. It seemed like confusing, and it also seemed like they hadn't put any thought into why anyone was doing what they were doing.
Yeah, I was lost by the end. I think missed that she had actually decided to stay. So by the end, I was like, wait, what? Isn't she supposed to be moving out right now? Okay. But you're right. They don't do anything with that relationship. So it does just seem like her entire motivation is just trolling her family.
The hilarious thing about it is that what man anywhere, someone says, we're moving in together, and he goes, cool.
Right.
I mean, what person?
Well, Kyle.
I mean, it would have been funny.
Especially a man with a motorcycle. My goodness.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, as his pickup ladies. I have worked in multiple video stores and dealt with a lot of pornography. So it really touched my heart to see so many pornography references.
Well, that comes straight from her stand-up act, right? Probably the reason the show is not very good is because she had like really no creative input in it, from what I understand. And so although they had sort of put the show together with her stand-up in mind, her stand-up is written by her and the show is not written by her. And that, I think, is probably a big part of why it never quite figures out
what it's doing,
what it wants to be. Yeah. And I thought the whole thing in her stand-up, the idea is that her parents own a bookstore, and at the bookstore, and maybe it's a video store too or something, they like sell all this like porn, and that the mother is like scandalized by it. And I've seen Margaret Cho do that in her stand-up, and it's very funny. And I feel like they kind of like lost the funny part of it. And in this, it just became about basically rattling off a bunch of porn titles.
Like Free the Willy.
Funny in her stand-up is more about her mother's reaction to it, right? Which like they had a little bit of this in it, but it was mostly just someone reading fake porn titles in accent.
I think it's funny to hear a woman get up and like lambaste her family in a very over-the-top hyperbolic way. That's funny. And then it doesn't really translate into a show because the person playing that character cannot be hyperbolic and like an exaggeration. She's supposed to kind of be a real person.
Right.
It's funny. Also, Margaret Cho's original stand-up is dirty as fuck.
Exactly.
I understand why they didn't let her anywhere near the writer's room.
Well, that's what's so interesting about it is that her stand-up is so dirty. To me, like rated R. I wasn't allowed to watch it. But All American Girl, the tone of it is so...
And she lives at home.
It's very, very family friendly. I mean, maybe that's why I, in my memory, associate it with TGIF, because it feels so for kids, for families. And it doesn't really jibe with the sensibility of her actual stand-up. They're taking these little pieces of her stand-up and trying to build a family-friendly show out of it, and it just does not really work.
It might have been more interesting, I think, if you just played herself like a young 20-something living in the city, and then she would go see her parents sometimes, right? And then you'd see.
Well, I think that's what they were going to try to do when they were trying to spin it off for a second season. I think the idea was that she was going to live with her roommates, and somehow the grandma was still going to be around somehow.
Because the grandma is the Urkel of the show. She is like she's like the breakout star, and you got to keep her in. They were considering doing a spinoff, retooling the show, and just relaunching it as something called Young Americans. I think Mariska Hargitay was going to be on it. Diedrich Bader.
Oh, Mariska Hargitay is known for her humor.
That's right. She's super hilarious. But Diedrich Bader, who was in Office Space, but also you know him from the Drew Carey show. So he's funny. And it was going to be about her being young and having roommates, living her young 20-something life, which probably should have been the show they made in the first place. And in doing it that way, probably would have avoided a lot of the criticism that they got about the stereotypes that they were portraying, the casting decisions. It's a show about Korean Americans, and she is the only Korean American in the cast. Everyone else is Chinese or Japanese, and so that's a little tough. And then since they're not Korean, when they're talking in Korean, it's basically gobbledygook. I think when you're getting that stuff so wrong, and also it's supposed to be, here's this comedian and this is her voice, but if you're not really highlighting the comedian and you're also getting the family stuff so wrong, why are you doing this in the first place, you know?
Yeah. And I think, I'm certainly not a person who thinks that people of different ethnicities can never write outside their experience or whatever. But I do also think that because this is a show that is basically entirely based in sort of like ethnic humor, jokes about the ethnic immigrant experience and the Asian American experience and all that stuff. It's not that it's offensive necessarily. It's more that it just seems pretty phony.
Yes.
Because I think they do end up just sort of resting on
the easiest possible.
Right. They read the Joy Luck Club and they were like, we get it. Let's just do that. And, I think if they had had more people on the staff who actually came to the table with their own experiences, then
it would have been more interesting.
When Margaret Cho talks about her family in her stand-up, as far as I remember, it's not about like, oh, my mom wants me to marry a doctor, right? It's about how her family is like funny and like dirty and weird and not necessarily in the ways that you would expect if you're just basing it on a bunch of stereotypes about what Asian mothers are like.
It's sad to me that her family is sort of reduced to these cardboard cutout versions of what an Asian American family is. What the show is doing is she's supposed to be different from them. So what the writers did, they just went with, okay, her family is as traditional as possible just to highlight how different she is. And like, that's where the conflict ensues, but in doing so, they just sort of took away any layers to the family. They don't really have any depth. They're just sort of joke machines.
Does the show stay about that? Is every episode about Margaret Cho wanting to do American things and her mom wanting her to be like a traditional Korean young lady, or do they go in different directions?
According to the Wikipedia page, it says that the show basically was constantly trying to retool itself. It does sound like they moved away from the family very quickly and they were trying to focus more on the friends. Rachel and I both watched the first episode and watched the 17th episode. So we basically saw the beginning and the end of this series. And by the end of the series, the rest of the family barely exists. And it is about Margaret and her goals in life and like what she wants to be. And so that whole episode is her getting a chance to like manage a band. There's a lot more young people involved, but then they also found a way to like get the grandma a plot line. But I think by the end, it's an A plot and a B plot. A plot, Margaret and young friends. B plot, grandma doing something silly.
I mean, I will say that although I thought this show was not very good, this show is also a famous TV disaster of its time. And I didn't really think it was any worse or different from any other like shitty family sitcom from the 90s. Maybe Roseanne is one tick better for like its best seasons, but for the most part, it just seemed like, okay, this is a normal bad sitcom.
Rachel, we're going to have to do Grace Under Fire soon just so we can really compare and contrast these comedians. I do agree with you. I feel like the show is infamous for it being such a disaster just because it became fodder for Margaret Cho's comedy. And so she talked about it a lot. People know more about sort of the backstory of what was going on, all the weird stuff, the studio interference, the network interference, and just all of the problems she had. They made her lose weight,
I remember that, yeah.
Apparently she had kidney failure because of that after the show ended.
I was curious when they made her lose the weight. I was curious if that was like before the pilot or
she was pretty
thin
on the show.
I don't want to say this if it was like she had just lost the 30 pounds before she saw the pilot, but I thought she looked pretty good in the pilot.
I did too.
Like, and not just because she was skinny, but because she just had this very, you shouldn't say quoi.
She has star power. She just glows. She just is so engaging. You want to watch her and listen to what she says.
It gave me a hankering to watch some more of her stand-up.
Eventually became one of those like hands on their hips kind of comedians who just is unhappy about things without actually like being funny. But at the time, I remember watching her on MTV and Comedy Central and thinking she was the best.
Yeah, I saw her live once. It must have been in DC. It was great. I used to go see shows. I went to see David Sedaris do readings. I went and saw Kids in the Hall live show in DC once.
I saw the Kids in the Hall. It was like a reunion tour that they did like, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. And it was one of the best shows I've ever been to, even though it was just them redoing sketches we all love.
If I were an eccentric billionaire, I would start a 90s bar. Everyone would dress 90s. It'd be all 90s music. It'd be all 90s references. Oh, I understand now why, in the 80s and 90s, there were always older people that were still living in the 60s. I'm like, I'm one of those people that's just going to keep talking about the 90s, trying to live in the 90s again.
Do you remember in like Back to the Future 2 where they're like cafe 80s? It's just like Max Headroom is taking your order and things like that.
I mean, it sounds like it's Rachel's dream to open that.
Yeah, I just need to buy a $500,000 liquor license.
See, that's why you should move to Cleveland. There's a historic theater for sale in my neighborhood that is for sale, a theater that is a mixed use. It's got a movie set up, but it's also got for stage shows. They used to have like rock concerts there in the 80s. And it's also got a bunch of commercial property. The whole thing, it's like a city block, $400,000 for the whole thing.
Well, it probably needs a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, it's bombed out, but Ohio is doing the Vax-A-Million lottery and baby's fully vaxxed. So I might be.
What's Vax-A-Million lottery?
They're giving away $1 million to a random person who has gotten vaccinated.
$1 million?
$1 million.
How does Ohio have that much money?
I think it's part of like
Biden's just printing money.
They allocated it from the funds that the government gave them. There's a bunch of states that are basically doing sweepstakes to get people to get vaccinated. West Virginia is giving away guns and lifetime hunting licenses and pickup trucks. They're like, please get vaccinated, please.
How come I don't get anything?
I know.
I want something.
Because you're in a state where they don't need to bribe you to get vaccinated.
Okay, so this is the order I put of best to worst for the comedies that we have done so far.
Okay.
And you tell me what you think.
Okay.
Sybil, number 1.
Yes.
Caroline in the City, number 2.
They're basically tied for me.
Okay, Dinosaurs.
Yes.
Blossom.
Yes.
Wings.
Yes.
Single Guy.
Yes.
Love and War.
Yeah.
Herman's Head, Evening Shade, The Torkelsons.
That's correct.
I would put All American Girl below Blossom, but above Wings.
No, I think Wings is better than this.
Below Wings?
Yeah.
Between Wings and Single Guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is all preparation for our book.
Yeah. Bennett, we're going to write a book.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think so.
What's the best, not count, like if
Do you want to hear the dramas?
Yeah.
The Pretender is the best so far. The Pretender, Picket Fences, number 2. Sliders, number 3. Xena. Okay, I just did this. Val has not.
I haven't
signed off on it. 1, The Pretender. 2, Picket Fences. 3, Sliders. 4, Xena. 5, Father Dowling Mysteries. 6, Roar. Maybe Father Dowling should be at the bottom.
I feel like Roar should be higher than.
Okay,
Father
let's
Dowling.
move. Do you think Father Dowling is better or worse than Lois and Clark?
Lois and Clark is
okay.
better than you've ranked it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's Pretender, Picket Fences, Sliders, Xena, Roar, Lois and Clark, Father Dowling, VR5.
Yes.
Okay.
One
And then
thing is-
Zusha's in its own category.
Yeah.
Miscellaneous.
Which
Can
I-
say
which
something
I
as
love-
someone who
Yeah.
does listen to like pretty much all of these.
Yeah.
I have a little problem with your methodology.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I do, because you watch so many pilots, and I feel like you can't judge a show by the pilot, because
Well,
so
we
many
try to
times-
watch more than one.
That's true.
Okay. Pilot is usually a lot of times they recast and retool, and also they're just trying to do all sorts of stuff in the pilot.
For most of these, we've watched 2.
Yes. Not
I'm
VR5
looking at
though.
some. I did. I watched the second VR5.
did watch 2 of those. Oh my god. Oh. I like
I
blocked
guess a
that
lot of
out.
them it's kind of hard to find. You just watch what you can find, right?
Yeah.
They're not
Pretty
like-
much. Yeah, there's not like a wealth of definitely for like Love and War. We could find episode 4 of season 1, and then like on Amazon seasons 2 and 3 fully were on there. So we watched basically
But, I
what
mean,
we could find.
I have a
but-
question about Love and War, and I will apologize because I listened to the Love and War podcast last night at 4 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, and it did put me to sleep. No offense. It was late, so I didn't finish listening to it. But is that the show that Lisa Kudrow was on simultaneously to being on Friends? She played like a waitress on
No,
like
that-
2.
Mad About You.
Oh, that was Mad About You.
She played Ursula on Mad About You. She was a guest star on a lot of stuff though, so she might have been on Love and War.
We also have to do Kid 90, though.
Yes, we still have to do Kid 90. Emily was asking me, she's like, so do you think you guys are going to like expand into a different decade? And I was like, why? There's so many more to do.
I also think you could eventually expand into non-obscure shows of the 90s.
Yes, that's true. That might be fun. That might be fun too.
You're right that in order to do it right, we'd have to watch every episode of these shows.
I don't think
Sure.
you have to watch every episode. I just think you could watch not the pilot,
Yeah.
because they don't know what they're doing in the pilot.
But we always try. I mean, I'm looking at like at least half of these we've seen too.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, for Blossom, we watched like 5 episodes.
Yes.
But isn't that just because you loved it so much?
Yeah.
Pretender, we watched 1. Picket Fences watched 2, I think. Sliders, I've seen all Sliders. Roar, we didn't watch more. Lois Clark, we just watched 1. But see, sometimes we get saddled with a double pilot. And
Yes.
That's
See,
a real burden.
Bennett, the first episode of Lois and Clark was like 2 hours long.
So maybe after we get through the 100 shows on our list, we'll go back and do redos and like check.
Do you really have 100 shows on your list?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Do you know how many forgotten shows of the 90s there are? There's so many.
It's 143.
I mean, the thing that has surprised me most, because I feel like I watched so much TV in the 90s, but the thing that surprised me most is that I have seen so few of these shows.
Whoa, really?
I mean, I think so few of them, like maybe almost none of them. I used to watch Wings with my sister a lot because it was like on late at night.
I never watched that one. So
I never liked it. Even once did I ever like it. It came on at a certain time where Lucy and I would be sitting in front of the TV, like eating cereal. I think maybe even when I was in college was when we watched it because it was rerun at some bizarre time. But
that's how I watched Cheers. It was like on at 1 a.m. And basically I was always playing chicken with my parents because I had a TV in my room. I had one of those portable purple TVs that had a handle on the top.
My dad had one of those in the garage.
Yeah.
Watching baseball games.
And I would just leave it on until my parents got mad at me and then they'd come into my room and I'd pretend to be asleep.
I don't think Bennett was as much of a couch potato as we were. Bennett was doing other things. He was reading a lot more.
I wasn't allowed to watch TV. I think I was only allowed to watch TV before dinner for a big part of my childhood, which meant that I watched whatever was on that 5 to 7 sitcom block on Channel 5 or whatever.
Like the rerun block or whatever?
Yeah, but stuff that came on later, I had to get special dispensation from my parents to watch, which is why of all the shows that you've done, I think the ones that I've seen tend to be the ones that are on Friday and Saturday in 1994, because that was the year that I was 13 and sometimes babysat. I didn't really have social plans as much as I did later in life, but also I was out of the house.
Your parents can't restrict you from watching TV when you're babysitting, so you can
right. So it was like that's when I watched Picket Fences. That's when I watched Sisters, my favorite. I think that's probably when I saw All American Girl too, although it doesn't seem to have aired during that slot. But
this might be like a Mandela effect kind of thing, but I believe that it aired on Fridays.
I mean, it would have made sense for them to be trying it in other slots to see if they can make it work. Even if they're not trying to make it work in that slot, just trying to bring in people who are watching that is like a very popular block.
I mean, even for me, who watched 40 hours of television a week, I don't recognize a lot of these shows on our list.
I went through the like programming schedule and was like, yeah, I guess these are forgotten because I don't remember them either.
Okay, so we haven't done Mad Magazine or Accent Corner. Oh, yeah. All American Girl, GRRL. All American Riot Girl.
All American Riot Girl, that's good. I had All American Grown. And then All American Boil. I don't know. It's nothing.
Hurl.
All American Hurl. That's really good. All American Hurl.
Clearly a writer. I noticed that a lot of the characters in the show have Asian accents.
Oh, right. I guess that was another bone of contention because the mother, she's American. She was raised in America. And so she really...
I don't think I think all of them are. I mean, all the family.
Maybe.
I think all those accents are fake.
I guess there was specifically the mother people had issues with the accent that she was doing. But in watching it, I was like, well, she kind of had to do it that way because her mom's accent is part of Margaret Cho's stand-up act. She does her mother. It was kind of like maybe the woman who played her mother had to reverse engineer an accent based on Margaret Cho's impersonation of her.
I have a lot of thoughts about accents. I think about accents a lot. So if you were an actor and you were called upon to play an Irishman or a Welsh person or a British person or someone from Delaware County, then you would learn that accent, right? So I guess there's regional accents and then there is English as a second language accents. And that is where things get sticky. But I don't know how some people have accents, some people don't. Like, I don't know how you would say you were playing a character, someone in real life for whom English was a second language. I don't know. If you're going for authenticity, then you would have to put on some sort of accent. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's always a cruel mockery.
I know how you do it right. I don't think this would work now because the world is how it is now. Mm-hmm. But I think in the 90s, you could have gotten away with a lot by just making the writing better.
Absolutely.
Because the writing is better, people are not going to care about the accent because the character is going to feel less
real,
like a total stereotype, and therefore a lot can slide. And I actually think that's probably why why people criticize the mother's accent more than the grandmother's accent, because the grandmother has a little bit more life to her as a character. And so therefore it just works better. Well, I actually didn't know people were mad about any of the accents, but it's obviously, even just watching it now, it feels a little funny. I have no idea how authentic that accent is or anything, but
it would be interesting to compare it to Fresh Off the Boat, which
Yeah.
I've never seen, but apparently is a successful show about a Chinese immigrant family. And it's also set in the 80s for some reason, or the 90s.
And I guess I read on the Wikipedia page for this that on Fresh Off the Boat, there's a scene where they're watching All American Girl and making fun of it. So
Meta.
yeah, maybe.
Okay, so I was listening to our podcast from last week to just write the description, and we stopped talking about Love and War and moved into the other stuff we talked about. And I think we were only a quarter of the way through the episode.
Yes, that's true. You know, I mean,
woo, we're not even halfway through here. Okay.
there are some shows where we're like, I guess we have nothing to say about this. Anyway, what you watching?
Well, we've all finished watching all of Mayor of Easttown. I was oddly kind of neutral about the ending. Endings are hard, you know.
I thought they did it really well.
The climb was great, and then I went in and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I had no strong feelings.
I thought they landed the plane very nicely. I didn't think it was especially surprising or especially unsurprising, but I thought the way they wrapped it all up, it just felt very satisfying to me. And I was lightly surprised, I guess. I thought it was going to be lore. So when it wasn't lore,
but why didn't Lore go to jail for lying to the police and covering up?
Oh my God, you were just like my husband. Like John, the whole time.
That's what he was mad about?
They should put her in jail. I don't know, because like they just let that. I think they only used that as a lever to get people to talk and say who it really is. I think once they figure it out, they don't care that much about people who were obstructionists along the way, especially because it seems like she didn't know until, I can't remember, but I thought it was pretty
It's a bit gimmicky, right? That they acted like it was wrapped up and you look at the clock and you go, oh, there's 45 minutes left. What's going on here? You know, they've got something in store.
You know. I was just waiting for Guy Pearce to do something that was interesting. It's like, did you just exist to be a red herring the whole time? Come on.
As someone who does promote therapy and think therapy is important, I'm also a little resistant to the idea that, I don't know, I guess there are people out there for whom they start therapy and then all their problems are solved. But it really made it look as though she opened herself up to therapy and just fixed it. Maybe that's good. I don't know.
I thought it was good, but I mean, as with all mysteries, you're right. In the end, the conclusion is less satisfying than what comes before because you can't speculate anymore. The whole point of a mystery is the process of speculation, and when that's over, it's over. But I thought it was nice how they tied everything up. I thought it was charming in its optimism, kind of, for such a sort of depressing show. I did think it was like a major ripoff of Fraud Church.
I was on the Mayor of Easttown Reddit page quite a lot, and I wasn't surprised at all because many people had just basically guessed that this was who had done it, and they were correct.
I also wanted Siobhan to do something. We went through all of her.
I didn't want her to do anything. I wanted her to not be on the show.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Horrible.
Yes.
And why was she dressed so nicely all the time? That was like my major complaint about her. Was everybody else is like wearing sweatpants and looking totally dumpy, and she came into every scene like she was from a WB show from
exactly
10 years ago, like looking fully styled. And I also have a little bit of a bone to pick with TV lesbians in general. I don't know. I know a lot of lesbians, and I have never recognized any of these TV lesbians. I don't know lesbians who wear that many necklaces, really, and jewels.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
she just did not seem to fit into the show at all.
Oh, I remember my train of thought from a minute ago. People on the subreddit kept saying, what else should I watch next? And I just said, Broadchurch is the same show. I also couldn't believe that Lori took the baby. Wasn't that baby better off where he was?
No, because that dad,
the grandparents were raising, but the grandparents were raising him, who loved him so much.
I know, but they raised him too, and
hey, sometimes you get a bad egg.
Although I guess she raised a murderous child, but the baby.
A lot of people on Reddit thought that something was going to come out about Kevin. There would just be this big reveal about Kevin didn't really kill himself, or oh my god, a lot of dum-dums were like, Kevin is DJ's father. I'm like, he died 2 years ago. Bottom line is a good show. You can nitpick it to death. It was enjoyable, and now I think Delco accents are cool. Good.
That's ridiculous.
I kept thinking about the show Parenthood. Have you guys seen Parenthood?
No.
Okay, so you know what it is, though. So Lauren Graham's daughter on Parenthood. If you were to ask me what was my one thought about Parenthood, was this girl's whole character arc was that she was a troubled teenager and then she decides she wants to go to Berkeley. The family lives in Berkeley. That's where they live. She's like, I want to go to Berkeley. She applies to Berkeley. She doesn't get in. And then she just becomes a nurse. I'm like, there are other colleges. She only applies to Berkeley and then just changes her whole life plan because she doesn't get in. And then I just thought it was funny that Siobhan just got into Berkeley on a whim. Like, oh, you want to get in? Okay, cool. The video teacher liked her and got her in because her videos are so good.
I remember when I was in high school, I didn't really know what to do when I was applying to colleges. It seemed like I had missed that day in class where they're like, here's how to find out where you should go. And I feel like I was like, Berkeley, I've heard of Berkeley because of the 60s. I don't know. Just like I had asked my guidance counselor about Berkeley, and my guidance counselor was a guidance counselor from Columbus, Ohio, and she only knew about schools in Ohio. And so she was basically like, you don't want to go there.
This is how you know you're not from Montgomery County, Maryland, where basically they started talking about what college we should go to in third grade and like didn't stop for 15 years.
I bet. No, in Columbus, Ohio, it's a big shruggy. Like they definitely were like, you should go to college, but where you should go or us helping, like the guidance counselors were just a shambles. They were no help. I went in for a session and the guidance counselor had confused me for one of my friends. She was like, so you play viola? And I was like, no. You're in the choir? No. I'm Valerie. Oh, okay.
I was wondering what school I could have gotten into if I wasn't trying to go to an art school. Because I had a 1320 on my SATs. I could have gone somewhere.
Stop bragging.
The other what you're watching is I finished watching Girls 5 Eva. Loved so much.
Good. I've still only watched the first episode. So.
Oh, wow. You gotta watch it. Bennett, have you seen it? Do you know what it is?
No, and in fact, I mean, I do know what it is, and I have not seen it yet, and I need something to watch. So maybe I'll watch that tonight.
You should watch it. So you need the Peacock subscription. Even with the subscription, there's ads. Unless there's two kinds of subscriptions, and there's like a premium one. Doesn't really like pick up till episode 4. So give it a few episodes. But it made me now, I'm like a Sarah Bareilles fan, I guess. All the songs are stuck in my head. I was listening to the Spotify channel that has all the songs.
I started watching Hacks.
Oh, really?
And it's horrendous. It's
yes!
So
Thank God. I watched the trailer and I was like, this looks like shit.
Like Ted Lasso bad?
I also didn't love Ted Lasso, but I thought Ted Lasso was fine. Ted Lasso was totally inoffensive to me, but didn't, warm my heart or set my life on fire.
That is exactly what I thought. Yeah, exactly.
We watched the 3rd episode last night. I mean, it has that problem that you might be familiar with this problem from watching another not very good show, Fabulous Mrs. Maisel, but
Marvelous Mrs.
Right. Shows about comedians are tough because like they have to be funny and they never are because
they're actresses.
Well, and also because you're just setting yourself up for failure when you put this premise that everybody on the show is hilarious and then you can't meet that mandate. It also has another really annoying TV lesbian from Mars, not the Joan Rivers character, but the other character who's really the main character of the show is this young lesbian writer who like goes to work for this Joan Rivers character. And again, she's just totally fucking unbearable and clomps around in these big combat boots, like yelling at everyone and being annoying. And it is again, like not like any lesbian I've ever encountered in the wild. So I thought it was bad. People have told me like it gets better, but
I mean, I like Jean Smart a lot and I watched the trailer because I like her a lot. It's HBO Max. Maybe it'll be good, but she's supposed to be the main character, the lesbian, right? And she gets this job working for Jean Smart, correct? She thinks that's beneath her or something. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the problems with the premise is that Jean Smart is both supposed to be sort of based on Joan Rivers, but is also, while being based on Joan Rivers, is supposed to be sort of a total embarrassment, which I think is sort of the opposite of what happened to Joan Rivers, which is that she became more and more legendary as she got older. But, there probably was a time when Joan Rivers was like considered trashy.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I don't know. The show just doesn't really make any sense. And it's also like really, really, really not funny.
I mean, when you are watching a trailer for a show about a comedian and the main character is supposed to be a writer for the comedian, you expect to laugh at least once during the trailer.
Right.
You expect for the comedian to make you laugh once, and you also expect for the writer to also say something funny to prove that she is up to the task of writing for this comedian.
Right, that she's this like hotshot young comedy writer. Yeah, it's kind of fun to see Jean Smart wearing all the different outfits or whatever, but I kind of think the Joan Rivers documentary from 10 years ago is,
I love that
like,
movie.
You should just watch that instead. It's much
right.
better.
If you want Joan Rivers, why don't you just watch Joan Rivers? And like that movie is super hilarious, but it's also like surprisingly touching.
Yeah.
You go on a journey of emotions watching that movie. It's incredible. So
this show is definitely supposed to be sort of like drawing from that documentary, I think. The character is very similar. It's just bad.
What I watched this week, you're going to laugh, Rachel. I watched 2 episodes of LA Law.
Got a hankering.
We watched Love and War with Susan Day, and I was like, oh, she was on LA Law. And LA Law is on Amazon Prime. Let's just check it out. See how she does in the show that after the Partridge Family sort of made her even more famous. Of course, she's not. It's a double pilot that's 2 hours long, and she's not in the first episode. But it was an interesting show.
How was it?
It was good. It kind of has a David E. Kelly vibe to it.
Isn't that where he got his start?
Is that it?
It is.
Yeah.
I think he got his start writing for that show, although probably not the pilot.
He didn't create it though, right?
No, I think he was like a lawyer and decided to be a TV writer and submitted his samples to LA Law and joined the staff as a writer, and then I think worked his way up the chain at that show. I could be totally getting that wrong.
I would believe it. Yeah, I mean, it was good. It's a lot of lawyers and shenanigans and weird stuff. Alfre Woodard is in like the first 2 episodes. They're taking a lot of big swings. Alfre Woodard plays a woman who was not only raped, but she has leukemia. And so you're like, oh, does it have to be both? And then also in the first 2 episodes, there's a secretary who turns out to be a trans woman. That's
forward looking.
There seems to be a lot of like forward looking stuff on the show, but then the show started in 1986. So there's still reactions to these things where you're like, ooh, oh boy. I mean, the trans woman like gets fired from her job after it's revealed.
And everybody's like, yay.
Yeah, like the one character who
Thank God.
The one character who is admittedly supposed to be a villain, he's like, well, yeah, I fired her because she's a freak of nature. And like, then that's it. I was like, you guys are lawyers. You can't do that. Like,
that does sound very David E. Kelly.
They're at a like staff meeting and he's like, yeah, she was a freak of nature, so I had to fire her. I'm like, whoa, okay. Whew. It made me real. It was weird. It was weird to watch a lawyer show from 1986.
All right.
Is that it? Thank you, Bennett.
Thank you, Bennett,
for having me again.
Yes, accepting this last minute invitation.
Always a pleasure. I was happy to get to watch this historic TV thing that I'd never seen before.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Right, good night. Bye.
Bye.